brave sweet Deet, on a quest to save all of Thra, is suddenly accosted by a giant spider, a giant rat, a goblin, an angry tree spirit, a werewolf with an acid grenade, a Dalek, and a tank. Suddenly, mighty Paladin Hup bursts from the undergrowth to save the day. Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and recently I watched the much-awaited Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. I absolutely loved it, and so much so that I had to do some crafty creative thing with it. Or two, or many. Probably many. But not all of them are going to work with video, so probably this is the only one that's going to appear on the channel here. I might post some other things in other places. Depends on what I make. Most of my regular viewers will know by now that my 3D printers, they don't work particularly well. I have persevered for over a week printing what should have taken about 4 hours of print time. It's taken me more than a week of just constantly clearing nozzle clog after nozzle clog after nozzle clog, changing settings, and I've been at this for nearly a year trying to figure out why these printers clog nozzles all the time. Today I'll mainly be looking at the Podling Hup Mighty Paladin model by Multiverse 3D Designs. I also made a Deet model using the CeresWorks, Kira the Gelfling, and Fizzgig. I glued some big ears on just to make it look a little bit more like Deet, but it's a very small model, so the details kind of are lost either way. And I'm also using Law the Rock Giant, also from Multiverse 3D Designs. All the links to these files are in the description. They're really good models. Some of these are absolutely amazing, so check them out. Have a look for some other stuff on Thingiverse as well. If I were a proper YouTuber, I'd have an introduction right here, but I'm not, so I don't. So this is how some of them look coming off of the printer. One of the things I've had to do with the printers is turning retraction off. There's a lot of stringing in this case, and honestly, it hasn't helped. But the stringing is easier to clean up than not having a part in the first place. Cleaning away the support material here, and the stringing as well, it's a little work with a knife, but it doesn't take too long. Once the first round of cleanup is done, it's not perfect, but there's another step to take. This is the largest of the models. It's about 55mm tall. The second one is about 35mm tall. You can see even at this size the detail starts to disappear. The smallest one at the end is about 20mm tall, and that's so that it can be roughly in scale with the 28 to 32mm models common in tabletop wargames and roleplay games. So this very, very tiny size of model was so small that the hand and spoon didn't even print, because some of those parts ended up smaller than the nozzle, and the slicer doesn't even bother to try to print them at that size. I printed this smallest one on its back to get as much detail as I could on the front surface, the face and chest, as that's the side that you usually look at. And because it was printed at an angle, the base was printed separately, but I'll glue that on in a moment. I used the EMA plastic weld, which is something I should probably get shares in given how much of it I use. This is a solvent, so always wear a gas mask if you do use this, and it melts PLA very nicely. Very good as a glue for 3D prints, and actually does a passable job at smoothing 3D printed surfaces as well. What I did was essentially just paint each of the models with the solvent, and that melted the outer surface for a short time. It does a very good job of bonding the PLA pieces. The middle model in particular had a crack in the back of its legs, and the smallest one needed gluing to the base. Importantly for this model, that spoon is very small, even in the largest version that I printed here, and the plastic weld bonds the layer lines on the surface and makes it a lot stronger than it would be otherwise. And here's how they look after the solvent. You can still clearly see the layer lines in this step, and even once painted they will be visible, but I'm not trying to get it perfectly smooth. I don't mind a little bit of the layer lines visible. I accept that it was 3D printed, but it's certainly a lot less noticeable than it would have been if I hadn't used the solvent smoothing. And on this smallest one, I've used some scraps of support material with the solvent and tried to sculpt the hand and spoon. It is far from perfect, but it's close enough for me to accept. I did manage to get an extra one of the mid-size model printed out. On the left here is the one that is smooth just with the EMA solvent weld. On the right, however, This has been smoothed with my slurry mixture. So I've taken some scraps of failed prints, of which I have many, but also support material, stringing, that kind of stuff, and thrown it into a jar of the solvent weld. And then the next time you come to use it, when you apply it, you have a little bit of PLA mixed in with the solvent. So when the solvent evaporates, it leaves that PLA behind. Not only has the solvent taken away a lot of the high spots, the PLA in the mixture has filled in some of the low spots. It removes a lot of detail, but it also reduces the layer lines. In this case, it hasn't actually made a massive difference, and I probably wouldn't bother to use this at this size in future, but if I was doing a much larger model, it might prove useful. So when it came to painting, I started with a flat grey primer, and you can see in the comparison between the two mid-size ones, there really is not much difference between them. Hup has a lot of kind of earthy tones, a lot of browns, so I started with a flat brown base coat. And then I picked out a lot of the lighter browns, particularly his hair was dry brushed here. And I mixed some green and some yellow in with that lighter brown to paint his hat. Hup's skin is slightly darker than the Caucasian skin tones that I have paints for, so I mixed in a little bit of brown to get it about right. This is lighter than it will end up being, but there's more steps to go. Here I mixed in some white and brown to make a cream colour for some of the details in his clothing. And of course we need the red for his jacket. However, again, this is brighter than it will end up being because of the very next step. Here I mix some washing up liquid with the water that I've been cleaning my brushes in. I actually add some extra brown to get it just the right tone, and that then creates a wash. And using the wash on the models gives it that kind of dirty, muted tone that kind of fits Hup's character. To finish it all up, I did some detailing work. I dry brushed the base, I painted the shoes, did some stuff on the belt. The eyes didn't come out particularly well, and I did redo those eyes. I've never been particularly good at doing eyes. And of course we have Deet and the Fizzgig down here that I painted as well. So with a final spray clear coat to hold the paint in place and protect them from the use they'll inevitably get, these have come out relatively well. My painting isn't as good as it used to be, but I haven't actually done much painting of this type in a very long time. So I'm pretty happy with how they've turned up. Some of them will end up on shelves, as most of these will be gifts for friends, and I'm keeping these two as models for tabletop wargaming and more likely roleplay games. But I really must lay down the law and call it done. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.